Hey guys, it's Sam from Massive Supply Co. and I just released my new update for my Photoshop plugin Bleeder. I'm going to show you how you can use this Photoshop plugin to take a super simple piece of text and turn it into a cool grungy piece of ink bled text using this plugin. Now I'm only going to go over the new effects that I've implemented in this new version of Bleeder. If you don't know how to use this plugin, you can go watch my other video to learn how to use it. Here I'm just going to be covering all of the new effects that have been added in this version. So if you've used Bleeder before, you're in the right spot. Otherwise, I recommend you go watch my other video first. So if you have the new version of Bleeder, you're going to want to make sure that you install the new Bleeder patterns first. What you can do is go to Window, Patterns, and install the new Bleeder patterns file that I've included with your download. Click on the hamburger menu, Import Patterns, and then Bleeder Patterns, and hit Open, and it'll be installed. Sometimes it installs with a 0 after the name. I don't really know why this happens. If it messes with you, you can change the name of it, but it won't have any effect on the performance. Once this is installed and you have the plugin installed through the CCX file, then you should be good to go. So over here, I have a pretty simple Photoshop document set up. I just have some textures below and above my layer. I have the textures set up, and my text is just in a group called Content, where I have some blend if sliders set up. So you can see I don't have anything done to this text right now. So what I'm gonna do, take my layer and hit Convert to get started with the process. So again, if you've used Bleeder before, all the stuff up at the top is familiar to you. The bleed amount, the strength, all of these work the same as they have in the past version. So I'm going to jump right down to the grain. The grain amount and the grain size is something that you should be used to if you used Bleeder before, but the grain distance is a new feature in this version of Bleeder. So the grain distance, the way it works, is it basically affects the distance from the edge that the grain affects your layer. I know that's a little bit confusing, but I'm going to turn up these settings pretty high, and I'm actually going to grab this final one here, this final grain style, so that you can see what I'm talking about. So you can see that my grain distance is maxed out right now. If you look at the edge of my layer, or at the edge of my text, you can see that there's a little bit of an outline on it. Now if I bring the grain distance down, notice how that gets a little bit smaller. Basically what we're telling Bleeder to do is reduce the distance from the edge that this grain is actually applied. So the farther to the left it goes, the closer to the edge you're actually going to affect with the grain. Farther to the right we go, the more inwards on our layer we're going to affect. I'm super stoked about this addition. I think that this gives a much more realistic ink bleed sort of stamp effect than previous versions of Bleeder. So I'm really happy to have this new grain distance slider added. I think this adds a lot of realism to the ink bleed effect, and I've been getting a lot of utility out of it. So I'm going to put it about here. I kind of like the way this looks with this little bit of an outline around my text, and I'll move down to the crush section. So the crush section, again, is something that was in the first version of Bleeder, and in this 1.1.0 update, the crush distance is new. Before, you wouldn't be able to change the distance that the crush is applied to your layer. But now with the crush distance, you can see that as I go up, my effect is applied even farther out away from my layer. But if I bring it down really far, I'm just getting these small little artifacts around the edge of my layer. And I really like the way that this looks. I think something that, to get this simple, subtle ink bleed effect, I'm really happy with the way that this effect looks. So the crush distance is new. If you want to apply the bleed really far away from your layer, and sometimes the grain can, if you have the grain up too strong, can look a little strange on that. If you want to have a really strong, really harsh effect on your layer, turn that up really high. You want something really simple, little imperfections around the edge, bring your crush distance down and bring your amount up, and you can get just these little marks around the edge of your layer. I'm going to turn my grain back up a little bit here. But I'm liking the way that this is looking. Now the texture effect, this is something completely new in this version of Bleeder. There are, just like the grain and the crush sections, there are 4 different options for styles of texture that you can click through, set the style you like. There's the texture amount slider. This is going to affect, of course, how much texture is actually applied, the opacity of the texture, and the size, which is going to affect the scale of your texture. As we go up, the texture size is going to get bigger. As we go down, it's going to get smaller. pretty straightforward. So you can switch between different styles, set your size, set your texture amount. Again, I'm really stoked with this addition to the plugin. I think that this gives a much more realistic stamp, worn effect on text and vectors. Again, I'm getting a lot of sweet results out of the texture section of this new version of Bleeder, and I think you're gonna like what you get from it as well. I really like style 1, so I'm gonna go back to style 1 for now to show you how the ink effect works in the new version of Bleeder. Ink amount, as you can see, we got 4 options, just like the grain, crush, and texture, but these ones are arrows. We got an up, a down, a left, and a right. Basically what this is going to do is whichever one of these you select is going to tell Bleeder to put an ink smear from one side of the canvas to the other. So for example, I have up selected here. It's going to tell Bleeder, we're gonna start some ink down here at the bottom of the canvas and spread it up to the top as if we had run a printer and it ran out of ink as it was going up. Or we were running a print roller and again, same thing, it ran out of ink halfway up the canvas or halfway down the canvas, depending on what option you choose. Now this is mostly going to work in tandem with the texture effect. I'm gonna turn off the grain for a second just to give you a better look at how this works. You can see that the ink basically fills in those extra spots that the texture would be knocking out. So if I turn this off, you can see texture is impacting this bottom part of my layer. But if I press up, now we're getting some ink filling in what that texture had removed. So you can use these in tandem, the texture and the ink. The ink amount, again, is going to be the amount or the opacity of ink that is actually applied. I can bring it to like something like here. And you'll notice that we're knocking out most of that texture, but we're still getting some little texturing down at the bottom, even though most of it is filled. And the ink size is going to affect the roll-off or the spread, how far our ink is actually going from the bottom to the top of our canvas, or top to bottom, right to left, so on and so forth. Now again, it's important to know this ink amount is not applied to the edge of your layer, but it's applied to the edge of your canvas. So keep that in mind as you're working with it. If you have some text down here and a vector up here and they're all in one single Bleeder group, you're gonna notice that if you turn on your ink amount, it's going to affect one more than the other. So just keep that in mind. So I'm gonna turn my grain, I think I was on this one, go back to here. Maybe turn the ink amount up a little bit. The outline effect is something completely new in version 1.1.0 of Bleeder. And basically, 2 sliders, outline amount and outline size. These ones are again pretty straightforward. You can see that increasing the outline amount is going to give me a stroke around the edges of my layer, and the outline size is going to change the actual width of that stroke. If you want something really strong, really wide, turn it up high. If you want something small, a little more subtle, turn that size down. Now the outline amount, you're mostly going to want to use tied with the grain distance and the strength. You're not always going to get something placed exactly on the edge every single time you turn the outline amount on. Some of the time you're going to want to mess with this grain distance and the strength here to really refine the edge of your layer. I find that the strength, grain distance, and outline amount really work together to define the edge of my text, my vector, whatever it is that I'm working with. Again, I think that this implementation of the outline effect is a great way to get a more realistic stamp sort of print effect from Bleeder. So I'm really happy with the implementation of this effect. Again, I'm getting really sweet results from it, and I'm expecting that you will as well. Now on to the final effect in this version of Bleeder is the smear. Now smear, it had existed in the old version of Bleeder, but now we have a new slider. Before, we only had this horizontal one. We were only able to add a final horizontal smear to our layer, but I've also now added a vertical smear slider as well. So now instead of going horizontal, you can apply a vertical smear as well. You can use both of these together. You can use them both separate, totally depending on what sort of style you're going for. I like keeping these lower values personally. I like the way that that looks. Just adding a little bit of a final touch to my layer. Now this isn't part of Bleeder, but one final touch that I also like to do, grab an outer glow, really small, just a 1 pixel size and a little, play with the opacity till you get something you like. Just a little bit of an outer glow. Gives a semblance of more bleed on the layer. I like the way that that looks. The nice thing is if you apply it to your actual bleeder group, it's still non-destructive, so you can make changes afterwards. But overall, that's all the new stuff that is in Bleeder version 1.1.0. Again, I'm really happy with a lot of the effects that have been added into this new version. I think that the results that I'm getting are even more realistic. They're a lot more grungy, they're a lot more tactile than the results that I was getting in the first version, and I felt that the first version of Bleeder, I was still very satisfied with the results. So this is a huge step up, and I'm really happy with what is being produced from this new version of Bleeder. If you own Bleeder already, you should have gotten an email, which will give you a download to the new manual, the new patterns file. Even if you had the old patterns file, make sure that you install the new one, and the new CCX Photoshop plugin file. And if you're downloading Bleeder for the first time, you will be getting this version or a newer version if a newer version has come out since. If you haven't downloaded Bleeder before and you're seeing this video for the first time, you can download this through my website. There's a link to download Bleeder in the description of this video, so you can go there, download it for yourself. And if you're watching this video and you have any questions, any difficulties getting this installed, or just trying to figure out how do I get this to work, feel free to send me an email or a message on Instagram, and I'd be more than happy to help you get it working.